Oh, wake my soul and sing His praise aloud, sing His praise aloud. Oh, wake my soul and sing His praise aloud, sing His praise aloud. Ooh.
We've arrived at the 6th and final week of this teaching series, Set Apart. And throughout our time together, we've looked at different ways we as Jesus followers are called to live. Ways the church is to be a unique community in stark contrast to the ways of the world. Not in an effort to isolate ourselves from it, but to live deeply present in it, engaging with the world, actively living as light in the darkness, providing a better way of living. We've looked at being a community of unity in the midst of a culture of division, a community of tight-knit relationships in a culture of individualism. We've explored how to live from a place of peace in the midst of fear and anxiety all around us, how we pursue holiness in the midst of moral relativism and live with conviction in a culture of idolatry. And in this final week, we'll focus on how the church is called to be a community of rest in a culture of exhaustion. And when I started writing this sermon, I began by identifying all the ways our culture is overcome with exhaustion. The pandemic, political tensions, our obsession as a society with progress and productivity and living life up and to the right, how we praise and reward busyness and even find our value and our identity, not in who we are, but in what we do, what we have, our degrees, our job, our salary, our stuff. I came up with stories and illustrations as to why we so desperately need to experience the rest that Jesus talks about. And after I crafted this well thought out intro to our topic today, I decided to just delete all of it. Because no one needs to be convinced that we live in a culture of exhaustion. I mean, I wouldn't be telling you anything you didn't already know. It is so blatantly obvious everywhere you look. We're not just exhausted, we're burnt out. Almost every single person I know experienced burnout at some point during the pandemic. Some of us are still experiencing this burnout in 2022. Author Helen Peterson differentiates between exhaustion and burnout by saying, exhaustion means going to the point where you can't go any further. Burnout means reaching that point and pushing yourself beyond that, whether it's for days or weeks or years. Can anyone relate to that? I can. When I pause, and I take a deep breath, and I'm honest with myself, I find that this is where I am at. Yes, there are moments of reprieve or days or weeks that are much better than others, but the reality is I've been in a prolonged season of burnout. You see, ultimately, burnout is when your soul can no longer bear the weight of your life. I'm emotionally tired. I'm mentally tired. I'm physically tired, spiritually tired. I'm tired of people talking about being tired. And I know I'm not the only one. In his book, The Subversive Sabbath, Pastor and Professor A.J. Swoboda talks about all the progress we've had over the past century with technological advancement, time-saving devices, the fact that we have more information at our fingertips than at any other time in history, and yet all of that has still left us dissatisfied, exhausted, frazzled, and ever on edge. He says the result is that our bodies wear ragged. Our spirits thirst. We have an inability to simply sit still and be. And as we drown ourselves in 24/7 living, we seem to be able to do anything but quench our true thirst for the life of God. We've become perhaps the most emotionally exhausted, psychologically overworked, spiritually malnourished people in history. And if you can relate to any of that, I want you to lean in and not miss what God has for you today. Grab your Bible and find Matthew chapter 11. For all of us who are tired, weary, exhausted, and burned out, Jesus invites us into something different. Here in Matthew 11, Jesus offers us this promise. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Pastor Eugene Peterson paraphrases these verses in Matthew 11 like this in the Message translation. He says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." Over and against our culture of progress and burnout, we are invited to be a community of rest, creating a different and alternative way of living in the midst of the culture of exhaustion around us. Come to me, all of you who are weary, and I will give you rest for your souls. You see, Jesus isn't simply talking about the rest we find from vacation or the rest we feel after a spa day or the rest of lying on the couch and binge watching your favorite show. No, he's talking about true, life-giving rest for your soul, a rest that stays with us. A rest not for later when you die, but for right now, in this moment. In the midst of all the chaos, turmoil, heartbreak that life brings, Jesus wants to teach us how to be a people of rest. Doesn't that sound amazing? I mean, almost too good to be true. Rest for our souls in the midst of the chaos of this life. How? Sign me up. Well, we find the answer in what directly follows the passage we just read. The answer is Sabbath. Notice the very next line is not one, but two stories about the Sabbath. Now, the next line, it actually begins a new chapter. It's Matthew chapter 12, so it's easy to miss. But we have to remember when this was originally written, there weren't chapters and verses. Those were added at a later date to make it easy to read and search through Scripture. Usually, chapters and verses prove very helpful for us in navigating the Bible, but this is one of those times where that's not the case, because it makes it easy to miss the fact that rest for our souls and the Sabbath go hand in hand. Rest for our souls and the Sabbath go hand in hand. What is Sabbath? It may be an unfamiliar word to a lot of you. Well, Sabbath, it comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat. And it simply means to cease or to stop. The Sabbath or Shabbat is a day, a 24-hour period every single week to simply stop. Stop working. Stop wanting. Stop planning. Stop worrying. Stop striving. Stop accumulating. Just stop and rest. Rest and the practice of Sabbath, it's actually woven deeply into the story of God. You can't get 2 chapters into this book without encountering it. You see, in Genesis 1, God creates the heavens and the earth and everything that filled the earth, plants, animals, humanity. And then we get to Genesis chapter 2. And we read this. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So God, he spends 6 days creating, designing, problem solving, building, engineering. He does all of this work. And all along the way, he says, it's good, it's good, it's good. And then he gets to day 7 and it says he rested. It's that Hebrew word, Shabbat. He ceased. He stopped working. and he simply delighted in what he had created. Have you ever built something? Maybe you're not a builder and you put a piece of furniture together. We just put together a Murphy bed for when my parents come to visit. And we got halfway into putting the Murphy bed together and realized the frame that anchors it to the wall was a ½ inch too short. So we had to unbuild it all, redo the frame, then start building it from the beginning. It was awful. It took us so long. But man, when we finished that Murphy bed, we just stood back and we took a deep breath and we just rested, like in awe of our handiwork. I mean, you better believe we were taking pictures of it, like sending it to everyone we know. Look how awesome this Murphy bed is. I have a feeling God has a little bit more to be proud of than us. And that's kind of what it's like. He created everything. And then he rests and he looks back and he stands in awe and he delights in what he had created. And then throughout the rest of Scripture, we see this theme, this practice of Sabbath come up again and again and again in the Old Testament with the Israelites and in the New Testament in the life of Jesus in the early church. And since then, Christians have kept some form or another of Sabbath for some 2,000 years. However, in the past 150 years, give or take, this ancient practice of intentional, regular rest has long been discarded by much of the Western church. To quote A.J. Swoboda's book on Sabbath again, he says, "Sabbath has been largely forgotten by the church, which has uncritically mimicked the rhythms of the industrial and success-obsessed West. The result? Our road-weary, exhausted churches have largely failed to integrate Sabbath into their lives as vital elements of Christian discipleship." It's not as though we don't love God. No, we love God deeply. We just don't know how to sit with God anymore. We love God deeply. We just don't know how to sit with God anymore. It reminds me of the times when I'm tucking my boys in at night and I realize I haven't actually been present with them that day. I've been around them. We've done things together, gone places, eaten meals together, but I wasn't fully present with them. I didn't really sit with them, look them in the eyes, listen to them, be attentive to what was going on inside of them and attentive to what was going on inside of me. This is the opportunity that Sabbath provides us to not just love God, but to sit with him, to rest in him, to stop and find delight in him and in the things he delights in. But why? Why is Sabbath so important? Well, I want to give you 4 reasons why I believe Sabbath is still an important practice. I would even say an essential practice for us as Jesus followers to live out today. And because I'm like super good at what I do, all of these points, they all start with the letter R. So there you go. It'll be easy to remember. Here's the first reason. Sabbath is important because through Sabbath, we reflect. Through Sabbath, we reflect. In Exodus 20, God gives Moses and the Israelites 10 commandments that will define who they are as God's chosen people. 10 ways in which they will be set apart and live differently than the other nations around them. And the 4th of those 10 commandments is this in Exodus 20: remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you will labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that's in them, but he rested on the 7th day. You see, Sabbath is a way in which we reflect God, we image God. Sabbath is something God himself did, and when we do it, when we Sabbath, when we rest, we are imitating, we are reflecting our Creator. The second thing that makes Sabbath important is that through Sabbath, we remember. We remember who we are and who God is. It makes sense that the command God gives in Exodus is to remember the Sabbath. Why? Because we are prone to amnesia. And oftentimes we forget the things that matter most. Pastor Rich Villodas says this about Sabbath. Sabbath keeping, at its core, is a profession of faith. In observing it, we confess, I am not what I do. In observing it, we confess, the world will not stop if I cease from my work. In observing Sabbath, we confess Christ holds all things together. Sabbath reminds us we are not God. We are not the ones in control. And that is a very good thing. Through Sabbath, we are handing over one day a week. So we remember that, hey, even the other 6 days, they aren't truly ours either. Here's the third thing. Through Sabbath, we are reformed. We are reshaped. One way that Sabbath reforms us is it reforms our work. It reforms our view and our attitude towards our work. You see, Sabbath is a gift to us because it's a way of resistance. It's a way of us pushing back on the notion that we have to hustle, the notion that we have to do more, make more, be more, because our identity and our worth is found in our progress and our achievement. But God says, no, you don't. Your identity and your worth are found in who created you and who loves you, not in what you do and what you have. Sabbath is an intentional and active choice to put down what our culture will not. It allows us to release and entrust our work to God instead of tightly grasping it in our own hands. Sabbath is a day that moves us from production to presence. Being present with God, present with ourselves, present with others. But you see, Sabbath doesn't just reform the way we relate to work, it also reforms the way we relate to rest. Oftentimes when we think of resting, we imagine being alone, right? Having me time where I've got nothing planned, I get to be lazy, I'm scrolling through my phone for a few hours or having a Netflix binge night. But isn't it true that when we have that type of downtime, we're often left just as exhausted, if not more exhausted than before? Sabbath is something different. Sabbath rest is pouring in, not vegging out. Sabbath is stopping our working, but not stopping our living. Sabbath is slow and it's deliberate. It's mindful. It's where we live fully, not in our doing, but in our being. Sabbath is personal, but it's not private. Sabbath is not solitude. Solitude is solitude. Sabbath is stopping work and delighting in God's good creation. And this can mean being in nature or doing things that are in line with the way God has uniquely created us. But it also means being with people. People are a part of God's creation. And when we look at how Jesus observed Sabbath, it wasn't him just being alone all day. No, he was with people, present with people. Even God, when he rested, waited until after he made people to rest. If God wanted alone time, he would have swapped those days, right? Okay, day 6, I'm going to take a break. I've been working hard. And then once I fully recharge, I'll make people so that I can then have the energy to deal with them. No, that's not what he did. He wanted to be fully with us and rest with us. And Sabbath is a way that reforms us in the way we view work and in the way we view rest. Here's the fourth reason I'm going to give you as why Sabbath is important. Through Sabbath, we are restored. Through Sabbath, we are restored. If you read through the Gospels, you'll see there are lots of moments when Jesus gets flack from the religious leaders because he wasn't observing the Sabbath in the way they thought he should. I mean, they were focused on strict observance. Nothing that even resembled work or effort was allowed on Sabbath. Yet, Jesus went around performing miracles. He went around healing people on the Sabbath, and it ticked off the Pharisees. And in Mark 2, we find one of these moments where the religious leaders are reprimanding Jesus for breaking the Sabbath. And his response to them in this moment is, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. I mean, this is precisely why we often see Jesus healing people on Sabbath, because the goal of Sabbath is not rules, it's restoration. When Jesus healed people on Sabbath, he wasn't breaking the Sabbath, he was fulfilling it. Sabbath isn't just another thing to add to our Christian to-do list. It isn't a legalistic thing for us to follow and then feel guilty about when we don't meet our standard. No, Sabbath is given to us as a gift from our Creator, God, our loving Heavenly Father. Something that was made for us as a means of regularly, weekly providing space for us to find restoration from the things that have left us broken, tired, and weary. Because the reality is our world is heavy. Life is heavy. You don't even have to be working for life to feel heavy right now, every single day. I mean, just think through the past 2 weeks. It feels unrelenting. Sabbath is the gift of getting to find delight in the midst of all of that. I mean, it makes no sense in our world for us to have rest. Yet we've been given it freely. And as we set aside time weekly to relinquish control, to stop our work, stop our wanting, stop our planning and our striving, and instead rest. As we set aside time weekly to delight and to feast and play and contemplate, we are refreshed and restored. Sabbath is meant to be a weekly glimpse, a regular taste of the full rest and restoration we will experience in eternity with Jesus. When we Sabbath, we're practicing now for eternity. That's why Sabbath is so important. Through Sabbath, we reflect, we remember, and we are reformed and restored. To close, I want to give you a few practical tips for how we can begin to establish a regular rhythm of Sabbath in our lives, whether Sabbath is something you do regularly or it's a completely foreign concept for you. Here are some tips for how we can begin to implement this important practice. The first is start where you can. For most of us, having a weekly 24-hour period of Sabbath probably seems pretty daunting, maybe even impossible. If that's you, that's okay. Maybe you start by having a weekly Sabbath meal or a Sabbath afternoon or a Sabbath after the kids finally go to bed evening. Don't avoid this practice altogether if you can't commit to an entire day every week. Start where you can and then build from there. Here's the second thing. Have a preparation day. In the Bible, we see the day before Sabbath was called preparation day. This is when all the food was prepared. The cooking and the cleaning was done. All the things that needed to be accomplished prior to Sabbath would be accomplished then. That way, when Sabbath arrived, they could be fully present. They could fully enter into that rest and no longer focus on doing, but on being. And the same is true for us. We have to be intentional in preparing and planning for our Sabbath. So think through the non-work related tasks that you still need to get done in a week, and then plan time to complete them before Sabbath. Otherwise, it's going to be very tempting to utilize that day of rest to do all of the non-work related work things we do, right? The grocery shopping, the cleaning, the errands. Here's the third thing. Create a list of life-giving things. Not just a mental list, but an actual written list of the things that are life-giving for you. The reality is we enter Sabbath tired and exhausted. I don't know about you, but when I am mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted, I don't have the energy to try and think, what's good for my soul right now? No, I only have the energy to reach for the things that are convenient. My phone, my computer, the remote. And then it just sucks and drains the life out of me. Let's think ahead and develop a list of things that pour into our lives. Maybe it's being outside, going for hikes. Maybe it's playing sports or cooking good food. Maybe it's taking care of your plants or laying in a hammock or listening to music, dancing, whatever it may be for you. Make a list together with your roommates, your spouse, your kids. If you have young kids, it may not be an easy task to find things that bring life for you and your kids, but it's important to include them in the process. Here's some of the things on my life-giving list. A nap. I thought about which one should I list first, and the nap was just first that came to mind. A nap, a good cup of coffee, reading to my boys, or having Hudson, who he's just finishing kindergarten, he's just learning how to read, having him read to me. Playing Skippo, it's a card game with Garrett, or board games with friends. Coloring with Leighton, rocking Graham to sleep. Getting to spend intentional time with my mother-in-law or having meaningful conversations with my sisters. Playing telephone at the dinner table, and it always ends up with potty talk. That's just life with boys. Wrestling with my boys, eating a home-cooked meal that I didn't have to make. Dessert. Celebrating with others the ways that they've seen God at work in their life recently. FaceTiming my family in St. Louis. Playing soccer, family walks, being in the mountains, being at the beach. Those are just a few of the things that breathe life into my soul. What is it for you? It's important to know what breathes life into your soul. Take note of it and pursue it. That's what Sabbath is for. And here's the last tip, is just to turn off technology. Or maybe you just are intentional in only using technology when it's helping you pursue rest, helping you connect with others in meaningful ways. Do what you need to do to not let technology become the convenient go-to when you rest. My challenge for each of us is to begin to practice a Sabbath rhythm this week, in the next 7 days, in whatever way or time frame or day that you can. Sundays is a working day for me, so my Sabbath starts with Friday dinner and it ends with Saturday dinner. Sabbath for you might be on Sundays or a weekday. It might be a morning or an evening. Start where you can, but the goal is to be proactive, not passive. To intentionally enter into Sabbath in order to draw closer to God, to find rest and restoration in Him, to experience joy and delight and connection with others in a non-stressful, life-giving way, to be refreshed in your mind and in your body and in your spirit. And as we experience this true Sabbath rest, we will be able to invite others into that rest as well. Think about it. Are there people in your life who, when you hang out with them, when you're around them, they just leave you feeling filled up? Right? They're not people who drain you. They're people who fill you. They're the people who you could talk or hang out with for hours because their presence just helps you feel at ease. Their demeanor just literally affects your demeanor. It causes you to feel less anxious, perhaps even at rest. And this is what we are called to be. These are precisely the types of people that we as Jesus followers are called to be. Think of how appealing this would be to the world around us, to the people we interact with every day who are not followers of Jesus. As they are struggling with the heaviness of life, as they are weary and tired and exhausted and burned out, think of the impact it would make if whenever people encountered you at work or at the grocery store, whenever people entered your home or they interacted with your community group, or they walked into one of our buildings across the East Bay or joined us for church online, that they tangibly felt and experienced rest for their souls. Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." May Jesus shape us into a community of rest so we can be restored and provide restoration in our culture of exhaustion. Let's pray. Jesus, we come to you, weary and tired, yet with hope that you will keep your promise and you will provide rest for our souls. Teach us how to enter into this Sabbath rhythm where we can resist the culture of progress around us, where we can resist the culture of achievement around us, where we can resist the culture of exhaustion around us, and instead choose to trust you, to find rest in you. To be a people who pursue a slower pace, a pace that lines up with you, so that we can experience the joy, the delight, the goodness, the love, the restoration that you have for us. Not just in eternity, but right here, right now, in this life. May we be a people of rest, and may we give that rest to others as well. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
I don't have to tell you that we live in a culture of exhaustion. We're tired. We're tired of producing. We're tired of up and to the right. We're tired of competing. We're tired of comparing. That's why I'm so glad that in this new kingdom that Jesus brought, he's also teaching us to rest. And Becky, thanks for being here teaching us, or Jesus teaches us, but you teaches us. I'm not calling you Jesus, but I'm just saying.
Sounds a little like
I love that you brought this topic to us because, first of all, I'm surprised that you're right. We need to be taught to rest. Why do you think that is? Why are we so bad at this?
Yeah, I think on one reason is because of just this society we live in, right? That we are a society that focuses on productivity.
Absolutely.
Last week, Steve talked about idolatry, right? And in particular, ideological idolatries that are rampant throughout our culture. And productivity is one of those ideologies that's an idol for us, right? We find our worth, our significance, our value in doing, in our work, in our achievement, in our progress, and that's what society rewards, right? You're rewarded if you're busy. You're busyness is the only this idea of Sabbath it's the only commandment that Christians brag about breaking, right? We brag about being busy. I just didn't get any sleep last night. I just had so much going on, almost like it's a badge.
No, because it makes you feel
us.
important.
Yeah, it makes you feel important. I did something. Man. I contributed. And I'm not saying productivity is a bad thing in and of itself, right? I'm not saying, well, just don't do anything and let's just all be lazy. No, but it comes down to we have made productivity the thing, to where that's where our identity, that's where our worth, that's where our value comes from, and that's why rest is so hard for us. Because rest is not just being lazy, right? True rest is relinquishing control, right? It's saying, I can't carry the weight of life and I need to submit myself or surrender myself to the way Jesus has designed me to live, and to rest in the way that he shows us how to find that rest. And that's just not something that comes natural to us. No,
I really like all your little steps that we can take to actually get to a point where we Sabbath well. And one of the things that I think I heard you say is that it takes work to get to the point of okay, from here on out, I'm not working. I'm going to take 24 hours to not work. I'm not going to be lazy. I'm not going to isolate, but I'm going to invest in my people, invest in what brings me life. Do you think about it throughout the week to go, okay, I remember I have a kind of a cutoff. I've got a hard stop on Friday after dinner or Friday at dinner.
Yeah, this is not a okay, I decided I want a Sabbath and I set my Sabbath time and now I do Sabbath well, right? Like this is something that is going to take practice and something that will feel foreign and will feel strange and almost feel like there's resistance, like you're failing at it until you develop that habit. And I grew up in the church, right? Sabbath is not a foreign concept. It's something I heard about or talked a lot about, but we didn't value Sabbath. We valued the Lord's Day, right? Sundays, you go to church every Sunday. Even when we got into sports, I would miss my soccer games because being at church on Sunday was what was most important. It's the Lord's Day. But this idea of ceasing work and intentionally choosing to rest and delight in God and with others was a foreign concept. So then, as I became an adult and a pastor, I saw, okay, this is something I want to do. I don't want work to control me. I don't want ministry to control my life. I don't want my kids to resent the fact that I was ever a pastor because I literally just let it bleed into every area of my life, right? So when I started having kids, I would say I got really good at Sabbathing, as in having a day where I wasn't working, right? I'm not checking emails. I'm not thinking about work. I'm walking away from that. But even now still, I am not good at Sabbathing in a way that produces delight in God or delight in what God's doing in my life or delight in others, right? Like my Sabbath is not working, but it's kind of just vegging out. It's not intentional. It's not, it's my day to be on my phone more, not necessarily be on my phone less. And so there has been this need to be proactive in thinking through, okay, what are those life-giving things for me? How can we be intentional in preparing for that for when Sabbath does come, right? How can I make sure I go to Costco and I go to Trader Joe's before I get to Sabbath to where I'm not tempted to do that on Sabbath, right? Because the reality is I still need food, right? I need groceries. I need to have a clean house. And if I save all of that for my Sabbath day, then I'm just going to do that instead, right? And so it's having this intentionality and letting it be something that you practice and you start where you can and then you grow, right? And you allow it to develop into, I think, what Jesus designed Sabbath to be, but you won't get there overnight.
Yeah. What a countercultural way to live. And I've loved that about this whole series, that we set ourselves apart with conviction, with holiness, with hope, with silence, with solitude, to stand completely against culture or completely separate or opposite culture. But what's one thing that you really would like for us to take away from this whole series? We've done 6 weeks of this. What is one takeaway?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I would hope our church would get from this series is how critical it is for followers of Jesus to be set apart, but not in a way that removes us from the mission field God's called us to, right? Not in a way that separates us or isolates us. And growing up in the church, I've just seen that done too much. I've done that myself. My family's done that ourselves at times, where it's just easier to put up a wall and be okay with our holy huddle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And allow there to be separation from the people who are outside of our church building walls, right? Allow there to be separation from the people at work who don't share the same values I do, the people in my neighborhood who don't share the same values that I do, and to be okay with that. And that's just not what we see Jesus calling his church to be. We are set apart, yes. We live differently, intentionally, yes, but in a way that allows us to be fully engaged and deeply present with the world around us, in a way that allows us to be fully engaged and deeply present with our coworkers and our neighbors and the parents at our kids' school and the people we play soccer with and the students we go to school with, in a way that is intentionally showing them who Jesus is through the way we live our life.
What an attractive thing to do, and what a great mission.
Of Jesus, the great mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. We fall down, we lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. The greatness of His mercy and love at the feet of Jesus. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy. We cry, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. The atmosphere is changing now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place, fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Miracle can happen now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit